Survival games are weird. One day you're building a cozy little base, and the next you're starving to death because you forgot to pick up a berry. Over the years, hundreds of survival games have tried to perfect that experience, but only a few have truly succeeded. So today I'm playing 5 of the genre's classics each for 1 hour, then ranking them from worst to best. Subnautica. One of the most, if not the most immersive game on this list. The way the game started just felt like I was actually there, in the ocean. Well, not gonna lie, at first everything looked pretty chill. Like the water was clear, the fish were cute, and I was just swimming around collecting resources. But then I started going deeper and deeper, and suddenly I was hearing weird noises in the distance and questioning every life decision that led me there. Although I admit that it's not the scariest game I've ever played, during my hour playing, I spent most of my time gathering materials, exploring, and just trying to upgrade my gear. But the whole time, I had this feeling that something massive was watching me from somewhere in the dark, especially at night. This game is just a lot scarier when at night. Difficulty wise, it's one of the easiest survival games out there compared to most others, but I gotta say that it has a very cool oxygen system. Again, it's so immersive that every time I was running out of oxygen, I'd quickly panic and try to move to the surface as soon as possible. I know it's just a game, but it felt way more real than I expected it to be. By the way, this game first came out in early access all the way back in 2014, and honestly, it still feels better than a lot of survival games released today. Even after all these years, the atmosphere is still incredible. So where do we actually place it in the ranking? It's a tough choice. Honestly, it's a great game. I will place it on A tier. It just all comes down to preferences at the end of the day, so I can see why it could be an S tier for anyone else. I know that I will definitely come back to playing it again, but it would just get a bit repetitive, and that's why I put it on A tier. I mean, all survival games are repetitive. But that's just my ranking. It doesn't necessarily mean that the game is an A tier itself. Don't Stop was probably the game that confused me the most out of all 5. The second you spawn in, the game basically throws you into the world and says, figure it out yourself. There's pretty much no tutorial whatsoever. No hand holding and no real explanation of what you should be doing. Now, to be fair, that sense of discovery is part of the appeal, but as a new player, I spent a good chunk of my time wondering if I was doing anything right. One thing I immediately loved though was the art style. It has this really unique hand-drawn look that makes it stand out from pretty much every other survival game on this list. The sound design is great too. Every action has its own weird little sound effects, and it all fits the game's atmosphere perfectly. But don't let the cartoon look fool you. This game is way harder than it looks. The nights are ridiculously dark, and if you're not prepared, things can go south really fast. More than once, I found myself desperately trying to get a light source before darkness completely swallowed me. I also wasn't a huge fan of the mouse controls. They felt a little awkward at times, although the keyboard controls were perfectly fine. The HUD took me a while to understand as well. There are a lot of things happening on screen, and as a beginner, it wasn't always obvious what everything meant.
What the hell?
Even though I most likely won't play the game again, I can confidently say it serves its own people right. And now it's the time to rank it. As much as I like the art style and everything the game had to offer, I feel like it just wasn't for me. So I'm gonna put it on B, because I'm not going to come back into playing it ever again. It just wasn't like the type of survival game I would like to play. The Long Dark was easily one of my favorite games on this list. And honestly, one of the best survival games I've ever played. I like to mention that I played the survival mode, not the story mode, but they're pretty much the same. The first thing that stood out to me was the sound design. Everything just sounds so good. The wind, the snow, your footsteps, the wildlife, it all comes together and makes the world feel really believable. What I really liked was how important time feels. You can't just do whatever you want forever because time is constantly moving. I even found out that if you leave food cooking and go to sleep, you'll wake up to a burned meal because every task takes a certain amount of time, just like in real life. It's such a small detail, but stuff like that makes the game feel really immersive. The graphics deserve a mention too. The art style is beautiful, and even better, it runs great on older hardware. Well, how do I know? Because I'm on old hardware. There's not much less to say. The Long Dark ended up being my second favorite game on this list, and after playing it, I can completely understand why it's considered a survival classic. Now it's time to rank The Long Dark. Easiest tier. There are some things I like to improve, but nothing is perfect anyway, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Project Zomboid. I'm not sure where to start with this one. As you can probably already tell, this one wasn't my favorite. Now, before the angry comments arrive, I don't think it's a bad game at all. It just didn't really click with me the way some of the others did. A big problem I had was how little direction the game gives you. Once you're thrown into the world, you're pretty much on your own. I spent a lot of my time wandering around, looting random houses, and honestly, not being completely sure what I should be doing, like focusing on to survive. The graphics were another thing I wasn't completely sold on. They're not bad, and the art style is definitely unique, but compared to some of the other games on this list, it wasn't exactly a visual showcase. That being said, the game does a lot of things really well. Tutorial was surprisingly funny and gave me a much better first impression than I expected. It managed to teach the basics while also having a bit of personality, which I appreciated. I also loved how much customization there is between all the traits, settings, and world options. It feels like you can tweak almost everything to create your own version of Apocalypse. Even though I didn't like the game that much, I can absolutely see why so many people love this game, and I get the impression that the more time you put into it, the better it gets. For me though, this was the weakest game on the list. Not because it was bad, but simply because it wasn't really my type of survival game. So where do we actually rank it? I think we're gonna put it just behind Don't Starve on B tier. Yeah, that's a pretty good spot because I think Don't Starve was a bit ahead, at least for me, but they were both pretty similar, so yeah, B tier. Now comes my favorite game, the last and the most exciting one, The Forest. You know, I've played a lot of survival games, but The Forest just gets so many things right. The story, the graphics, the crafting system, and the whole survival thing is just top notch. But as I said before, nothing is perfect, and The Forest, although amazing, has its own flaws too.
Oh, hell no!
For example, the survival mechanics are pretty detailed, but not as detailed as The Long Dark. But I guess not everyone likes it super detailed, so that's the draw. What's not a draw is the animals' AI. I mean, just look at this.
Why you bully me?
Other than that, everything else is just so damn fun. For example, let me talk about the caves. The caves in this game are the best I've ever seen in any survival game. They're massive, they're terrifying, and it just feels like you're actually in a cave. Even while I was carrying a lighter or a torch, some areas were so dark that I couldn't even see. Now think about how scary it is to take a step forward in that situation. About the story, I don't want to spoil much, but basically you're trying to find your son who you lost in a plane crash. The thing I liked a lot though was that the game encourages you to explore and piece things together yourself. So if you don't search the whole map, you're gonna miss some part of the story. I said the caves are the best out of many games, right? The inventory system is even better.
Nice.
Everything is laid out on your backpack, and for some reason, it's just incredibly satisfying to use. What's even more impressive is how good the game still looks. Considering its age, the graphics have held up incredibly well, and some areas genuinely look beautiful. The difficulty also feels just right. It's challenging enough to keep you engaged, but it never feels like it's frustrating or unfair. For me, The Forest is a complete package. Great survival mechanics, great exploration, a decent story, immersive caves, and plenty of scary moments. It's just what comes to my mind when I think of a survival game. And that's why it's gonna be at the top of my ranking.